So I work as an attorney for the Office of Regional Conflict Counsel. What they do is they represent people charged with crimes where they can't afford an attorney. So all our clients are indigent people. What that means is that they just can't pay for an attorney. And ever since about 1970 is when it really started turning around, but in the late 1960s is when the people first started having appointed attorneys in criminal cases. Before then, people just got stuck. They had to represent themselves, and it's really hard to defend yourself against a seasoned attorney when you don't have that experience or that education.
Ms. Dominguez, I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you showing the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I just turned it on right now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now we can see it. I wanted to make sure that we were
Okay.
okay. Thank you. Sorry.
So that right there is a picture of Clarence Gideon. He's the seminal case for having indigent counsel, which is the work that I do, is Gideon versus Wainwright. When he was in a bar, there was a couple of people in the bar. Some change got stolen. For some reason, they accused him over everybody else, even though they didn't find him with the coins. He ended up going to court, and the judge said, "Okay, we're going to trial." And he asked the judge, "Please, can you give me an attorney? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm innocent. I can't represent myself. I can't defend myself." And the judge said, "Well, do you know how to read and write?" He said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, well, that's enough for you to defend yourself." Obviously, against a seasoned prosecutor, he lost, and he ended up going to prison for 3 years. While he's in prison, he wrote a letter to the U.S. Supreme Court. And while he was in prison, he did a little bit of studying. The Sixth Amendment says that you have a right to an attorney to be represented by counsel. And he said, "Well, how did I end up in prison without an attorney?" And the Supreme Court treated it as an appeal. Eventually, they agreed with him, and he got a chance to do his case all over again. But this time, the court appointed an attorney to defend him and represent him. And when he did have an attorney to represent and defend him, he was found not guilty, and he was let out of prison. And thanks to his case, now continuing on, people have the right to have an attorney represent them when they're charged with a felony. If you're not facing incarceration, you still are not entitled to have an attorney for crimes, but at least for that you do. I'm going to show you another bit about myself. I was raised by 3 women. The lady in the white dress, that's my mom. The lady in the green shirt is my mom's sister, my aunt Araceli. And then the lady with the white skirt, that's my grandma, my abuelita Elena. And that's me in the bottom. I used to have blonde hair in the sailor suit. And I'm very thankful that they came to this country to change their life from Nicaragua. And but the thing is that they came undocumented. They came with, to work hard. But what happens when you have to work so much and you have a child is that a lot of times you don't know how to navigate the education system, everything that could help kids thrive, all the classes that would help them thrive in school, even things like registering for the SAT, registering when I was younger for the FCAT, the ACT, college essays, all these things. My mom had no idea because she didn't go to school here. And it kind of falls on you as a kid to learn how to do all these things. I'm going to show you another picture of myself. On the left, that's me when I started first grade. I'm going to tie in a little bit about my work with how teachers have impacted my life. So the girl on the left, that's me in first grade. I remember, for some reason, I have a pretty good memory. I remember a lot of my early childhood. When I was in first grade, I went in, I didn't know how to read, write, do math. It was a big class of first graders, and they sat me in the back because I was not a good student and I was disruptive. And obviously, since I didn't know, I made noise, I talked to other classmates. So I got sat in the back. I was a terrible student. Eventually, what the class or what they did in order to weed out the bad kids basically was they moved them to a smaller classroom to kind of not be disruptive to the main class. But in that small class, the teacher, she sat me right at the very front because I was disruptive. And she figured if I sat in the front, I'd do better. And I did. I by sitting in the front and not and having more attention from a teacher, I ended up thriving in first grade. And then the other picture that you see on the right, that's the end. That's our award ceremony at the end of first grade. I'm wearing a little pin. That little pin they gave me because I was the best student in all of first grade of all the kids from the bad class and the good class. I ended up having the highest grades on everything just from getting that attention. And later on, I know that they've done studies on how where you sit can affect how good of a student you are. And there's a lot of studies that show that if you do sit in front, you actually do better as a student for some reason. You get more attention. You can't mess around because the teachers are looking at you more. But having that individualized attention shaped my life even as young as 6 years old, 6, 7 years old. Um, from then on, because I was doing so well and I got awards for being a good student, I feel like the teachers gave me more confidence, more attention. They taught me and had more patience with me, and it did shape who I became as a person, the confidence that I had. Um, so much so that I was able to help my family and had confidence in helping my family on everything. When you're a first generation American, a lot of times you end up even interpreting for your family. You become a little translator. Any bill, any legal document that came around, I was, as a little girl, reading it, reviewing it for my family. Um, so much so, and when I was in sixth grade, my mom finally had an opportunity to apply for amnesty in the United States. She didn't have a great attorney. The attorney that she had ended up missing her hearing with the judge for her to be able to stay in the country. But my mom had taken me with her because there were so many people that applied that they would start these hearings as early as 7 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. My mom couldn't take me to school, make it to drop me off in time and go back. So I ended up going with her. And when we went, the attorney wasn't there. And although my mom speaks English, when the judge started asking her questions, she got really nervous and just couldn't talk. She later told me that she wanted words to come out of her mouth, but they just did not come out. But I felt fine. And so I just thought I was going to interpret again. I thought, oh, maybe she doesn't understand the judge's question. And I started answering the judge's inquiries of her, why she should remain in the country, the things that could affect her stay. And I answered him, and he, I think, was kind of amused that there was a little kid arguing a legal issue, that he rubber stamped her application, and we got to stay. My mom got to stay in the country, which meant I got to stay in the country. And eventually, I didn't realize the magnitude of that decision or what happened that day. But looking back on it, that's what I always tell everybody. That's the first legal case I ever argued, my mom's case to stay in the country. Eventually, I graduated high school. I went to Miami-Dade. When I started Miami-Dade, the reason that I went to Miami-Dade was because my 12th grade English teacher set us up for a field trip to go to Miami-Dade just so that we could see what the school was like, an option that was available for anybody. We did I don't know if they still do it, but they do an exam to see where you place for English and math. So I had that done. They had a summer program where you can start college a little bit earlier than, instead of August, you could start in the summer. And I signed up thanks to that teacher setting up that field trip. And in Miami-Dade, I met a lot of wonderful professors. I felt that they were good in guiding me and what I wanted to do in the future. One of those professors was Sandy Castillo. You might know her. She asked me, what do I want to do? And I told her I wanted to be an attorney. That was a dream of mine since I was a child. And she told me she had a sister that worked at a law firm when I was about 18, 19 years old. And she said, well, they're always looking for people to work there. I'll connect you with my sister. You can apply. I did. And that helped me get my first legal job, my first foot in the door into the legal world. Things like that, was something small for her to do. She has a sister. They're looking for someone to work. She has a student that's interested in it. But it changed my life and probably the trajectory of where I would have ended up. From Miami-Dade, I went to Barry, also had phenomenal professors there. I always tell people that it feels like I scammed the system because I was an English major. So I got to read a lot of wonderful works and to get a degree out of it. And my professors were fantastic. I went to St. Thomas for law school. Uh, Over there, I also felt that I had great professors. I eventually graduated from law school there. I think I have a picture of my graduation. You can see, again, it's my mom in the red with the red purse, my grandma with the white shirt, and then my mom's sister in the black shirt. They had to be there for my graduation. They felt like it was their graduation, of their hard effort as well into making me an attorney. And I knew that what I wanted to do was help indigent people, help people that didn't have the means to hire an attorney to defend themselves. But I had no idea of how bad it really was for some of these people that are charged with crimes. I had no idea of the racial disparity that goes into how many people are arrested, how it affects how your race and how much money you have affects how you're sentenced. And I related so much to my clients being a first generation American coming from not a lot of means, not having the same amount of attention that someone that has parents that could be there all day to pick them up from school, to help them with their homework, to help them apply for schools. I related a lot to them, and I think what made a big difference in my life was having teachers or different adults pay attention to me in a special way to help guide me. When I first started off as a public defender, I started representing juveniles. And a lot of 90% of my clients, when they had court hearings, to be charged as a juvenile, you have to be under 18. The majority of them were about 12 to 15 years old. When you are a juvenile charged with a crime, in the petition, which is the charging document, they also put your parents' name because your parents are supposed to come with you to court and see what's going on and be involved and participate. But 90% of my clients, their parents did not go to court with them. And that was just unfathomable to me, that children are going to court by themselves, facing criminal consequences, facing incarceration, and their parents either couldn't come because they were working too hard or just didn't care to come. And a lot of these kids, once they start off in the criminal justice system or injustice system, they don't get out of it. They're stuck in there. I learned a lot about why that is, and part of it is the way that their brains are built are not the same as an adult. I put a little picture of it. Most adults, when they think about consequences, you can do brain mappings, and you see that what lights up is like the front of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, and that helps you process decision making, consequences, things like that, reasoning, planning. But kids, when they are faced with a decision making, what lights up, what they can see is their amygdala, and that is like you're looking at is kind of like that you don't think about consequences. It's like reward based, and so they can't think of, if I steal this, I'm going to go to jail, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm not going to be able to get into college, I'm going to have a criminal record, I'll never be able to go into the military, I'll never be able to be a police officer, I won't be able to go to law school. All these things, if you have a juvenile criminal background, it affects your ability to have different kinds of jobs when you're an adult. And kids don't think about this, and kids don't think about being incarcerated or anything like that. And I tried my best to represent them, try to keep them without a criminal record. But once I started representing adults, I saw the similar kind of things happening. The family was not supportive. They weren't there. No adult ever took an interest in them. A couple of examples that I have, I represented a 17-year-old in adult court who stole a TV from a prosecutor's house. So because it was a prosecutor's house that got burglarized, they took it really seriously, and they wanted to give him the maximum, which is 15 years in prison for stealing a television from somebody's house. I obviously didn't want him to get that. I wanted him to be able to get probation. But when you're charged with a burglary, the minimum the judge can sentence you is 2 years of incarceration. But if you're under the age of 21, you can do this thing. It's called a youthful offender hearing, where the judge can determine that because of your age, that it's not appropriate to sentence you to prison or as much prison as you're facing, and then they max your sentence to 6 years in prison. I tried to talk to his parents to come to court and explain why he would do something like this, and if there's anything good about his life. Is he good with his parents? Is he helpful with his siblings? Is he respectful of his parents? Does he have any extracurricular activities? Things that I could present to the court to help save him from a long prison sentence. And they wouldn't answer my calls. They wouldn't talk to me. They were not interested in their kid's case. They said, he stole that, let him go to prison. And they would not talk to me. And I had a hard time finding family that would talk to me. Eventually, I was able to find an older brother who talked to me about his life. And they said that when my client started high school, he went to school in his middle school uniform because he didn't have money for clothes. His parents didn't buy him clothes to wear in high school, where they didn't have uniform anymore. They were supposed to wear regular clothes. All he had to wear that was nice and clean was his middle school uniform, and then he would get picked on, made fun of, him and his brothers. And stealing was the only way that this at that time was 17 years old, was able to get money to dress himself, to do things. It's not right. A lot of kids know from right and wrong, but it's an explanation of what happened. Because he didn't have clothes to go to school. He didn't want to go to school. He didn't have the opportunity to meet teachers that could take an interest in him, have someone care for him, help him. He just went into a life of crime. Thankfully, because of his brother's testimony, the judge did give him an opportunity to do juvenile programs, to be able to work, to go to school, things like that. I really, once somebody's sentenced, I usually don't follow the cases along, so I hope he did well. I've seen him out and about in the community. I haven't seen him again be arrested, but hopefully that did change him and help his life, not going to prison for 15 years, especially when you're so young. I do talk to my clients once they've been in the prison system for a while, when they come back for resentencing or another case. And life for juveniles is very difficult when they're sentenced as adults and put with adults. They're the targets of a lot of abuse, a lot of sexual abuse. They're beat up, their things are stolen. And so once that sentence is finished, the person that comes out is a very violent and dangerous person for the community. Race is a big reason why a lot of people get longer sentences. They've done a lot of studies on that. This is just a statistic of what Florida's criminal justice system looks like. That we have 99,000 inmates in prison. Prisons are, once your case is over and you're sentenced for a crime, however long that is, we have 99,000 people that are finally sentenced. Local jails are while your cases are pending. We have about 53,000 people in local jails in Florida. There's a little chart that shows the youth involuntary commitment. Those are the young people that get sentenced in the criminal justice system. And we have about 211,000 people on probation. I always say probation is a setup for a longer prison sentence. It's very hard to complete probation. I probably, not being involved in crime and knowing what the criminal justice system is like, would have a hard time myself completing probation. Just some of the rules are very arbitrary. Some of the things that they require are very difficult to do. For example, when you're on probation, they will call you and just say, within the next 20 minutes, you need to come to my office to get drug tested. And you'll say, well, I'm in school, I can't leave class, I'm at work, especially if you have a minimum wage job, they're not very flexible, they don't let you out. And the probation officer will tell you, well, I don't care. It's a random drug test. You have to be here in 20 minutes, figure it out. So you end up going to that, maybe getting fired, and now you don't have a job. You can get violated for probation for not having a job. You get violated for missing a drug test screening. And once you're back on probation, you're facing the sentence that you were facing originally on the case. So it's a very difficult system and things to do. And then you can see the population. There's a population of white people, Black people, Latinos, versus how many are sentenced to prison and jail. The biggest disparity, as you can see in the chart, is with Black people. The population is 16%, but somehow they make up almost half of the people that are um, sentenced to prison. Um, and I do see a lot of my clients are Black, and it's not because they commit the most crimes. It really is that their neighborhoods are policed the most. The majority of the judges that I'm in front of are white. I don't think the majority of them are inherently racist, um, but they have done studies that um, you can that it's hard to relate to someone if you don't have a lot of people like that within your social circle or within your community. So, for example, when a white judge sees a young teenager that's white, they might look at them and think of their children. They might look at them and think of their nieces and nephew, and will excuse some of the stuff as saying, well, they're young, they're not fully developed, it's a mistake. They'll grow out of it, and once they become an adult, they'll be good and productive members of society. But if they don't have a lot of they don't have a lot of contact with people of different races, Latino, Black, any other ethnicity, when they see that a similar teenager that is of a different race, they don't look at them as their nieces and nephews, their children, and they do sentence them harsher. And I've seen that a lot, firsthand experience. I have seen judges that I don't think are racist, but they don't relate the same way to people of different races. I eventually, through being a defense attorney, I moved up. I've done a lot of murder trials. This was the headline for my first murder trial. The case deadlocked. What that means is that the jury couldn't come to a decision on my first case. My client right there was charged with murdering a prostitute. I honestly, there was not sufficient evidence that my client committed this murder. His cell phone pinged of being within the area, and there was text messages back and forth between him and the victim. But she was a prostitute. She had contact with a lot of different people, and she had talked to a lot of people that night. And the area where it happened is just where the same area where my client lived. And the cell phone towers, the range between when you ping versus where you are, could be as big as 10 miles out, depending on which tower is full or something like that, and then a minimum of 2 to 3 miles if your cell phone pings at a certain tower. So that's really all they had against him. They didn't have any DNA. They didn't have any eyewitness testimony. There was nobody in the world that could say that they had any problems with each other. But he ended up getting charged. The jury didn't come to the decision the first time we went to trial. The second time we went to trial, he ended up being acquitted, and he was found not guilty of that crime. Obviously, when there's a not guilty, it's not as big a headline as somebody was murdered, or this case is being tried again. They don't publish a lot of acquittals or people that are acquitted in the newspaper. So the second time around, when he was acquitted, although the media was there, they didn't talk about it, him being acquitted. This is another one of my cases. My client is smiling right there because he was acquitted of juvenile in possession of ammunition. If you've ever committed a crime as a juvenile, you can't have a gun until you're 24 or anything related to a gun like ammunition. So he had borrowed a friend's car. The ammunition was found in the trunk. We argued he didn't know that the ammunition was in the trunk, because when somebody lends you their car, you're not looking through their car to see if there's anything suspect or suspicious or wrong. When someone lends you a car, you get in, you drive it. No DNA or fingerprints on the ammunition. The car wasn't registered to him. The car was registered to another person. I believe he was stopped because he was Black. The officer said that he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, but that's something that you really can't disprove in court unless there's a camera in your car. And so instead of just ticketing him for the seatbelt, they made him wait. They, I believe, illegally searched his car. We ended up going to trial. He was also acquitted. But that client right there, he's also had a very difficult childhood, without family or guidance or people that can change his life. And I think that the difference between me and a lot of my clients is just having that individualized attention, the teachers that care for you, the teachers that want to help you, that go a little bit beyond of just what you learn in class, but even guide you and will answer questions after the class is over. Things like that can change a person's life forever. And I think that when you help one person, the impact that you have, there's a greater impact that you have in your whole community, because that one person can go on to help a lot of other people. And you may not remember a lot of your students, but I'm pretty sure a lot of your students remember you and the impact that you had on your life. So I want to thank you all for the work that you do, and I hope that this presentation helped a bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dominguez. We have a couple of minutes left. If anybody would like to ask any questions, feel free to post it in the chat or unmute your mics. We did get a message from Professor Jason Claiborne that said, "Thank you for the work that you do. My mother works in a detention center in Cleveland, and many youth dealt with a lot of neglect before entering."
Oh yes, it's not just neglect, but it's also like abuse. It's actual, sometimes physical abuse, sexual abuse, and schools is the only place that you can escape sometimes a very harsh and difficult household, difficult life. So that's where I know that teachers make a huge difference. And then your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 26. So even though a lot of you are teaching college students, their brains are still developing, and there's a big impact in the work that you do.
All right, so thank you so much, Ms. Dominguez, for this presentation. I think it's so timely, and the topic of incarceration and that kind of school to prison pipeline. These topics are so important right now, and I think you definitely connected with a lot of the folks in the audience. So we thank you very much for your time. This was excellent. I have posted a couple of links in the chat. We do have a couple more presentations at once, so please take a look at the symposium page, and please also feel free to leave any feedback or review the page for Ms. Hilary Dominguez's presentation today. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody for attending, and thank you, Ms. Dominguez, for taking time from your day to share your experiences with us.
Thank you so much. Have fun, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.